So earlier this month, on November 5th to be exact, Nintendo confirmed that not only will backwards compatibility be fully intact for the successor to the Nintendo Switch console, but also that Nintendo Switch Online will be rolling forward to this next generation system. And while a lot of the headlines and videos and topics and discussions at the time were very focused on backwards compatibility, because that's kind of the biggest deal out of what was announced there, I do feel like the Nintendo Switch Online confirmation is a huge deal in its own right and warrants a more in-depth conversation around what this service is really going to look like on the next gen hardware. Because if you just look at what Nintendo has added in this current generation and you realize that this is an ongoing paid for subscription service and that there will be further value added features being added to it over the course of the successor console's life cycle, well, then you're going to look back at a certain point in time and realize that this has become a pretty beefy, no-brainer service that most Nintendo fans will want to sign up for. So we're going to break all of this down. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first start off by rereading the exact tweet that Furukawa shared, where he says, "This is Furukawa at today's corporate management policy briefing. We announced that Nintendo Switch software will also be playable on the successor to Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch Online will be available on the successor to Nintendo Switch as well. Further information about the successor to Nintendo Switch, including its compatibility with Nintendo Switch, will be announced at a later date." Now, on one hand, you could actually go in and say, okay, Furukawa was straight up saying Nintendo Switch Online is going to work on the next gen console. And does that also kind of maybe reveal the name of the console in a way? Because I don't think they're getting away from the Switch moniker. Like, we saw that one name Switch Attach that was floated around out there because a YouTube survey was asking about something called Switch Attach. I hope it's not that. I do think Nintendo Switch 2 is actually the more logical name, and it might be the first time we ever see Nintendo go in the direction of a numbered console. But with how successful the Switch brand is, I think that that's potentially actually the name of the console. And there is a Foxconn employee that did upload a badge ID that claimed that the back of the console has a big Switch logo and a 2 next to it. So it is very possible that this console ends up being called Switch 2, and Nintendo Switch Online would have to be rebranded entirely if the next gen hardware does not have Switch in the name whatsoever. But I do think we will get Nintendo kind of doing a 2.0 revamp of this service, kind of like a soft relaunch at some point, where there's going to be some pretty big upgrades. I believe day one. I think when this console launches, there will be some kind of additional console that will come to Nintendo Switch Online, and we'll talk about those possibilities in a moment. But I also think that because the service is not starting from ground zero and not having to totally hit the reset button and restart all of the content they've added, that gives Nintendo time and room to develop further features, not only from the console perspective, but also just some expected inclusions in the modern day. Like, I do think that at some point Nintendo should shift away from friend codes and go to usernames. We technically already have Nintendo account usernames, and we could just simply use those to find each other online as opposed to a friend code. I think something like this would be a very easy change for Nintendo to make, and they may do it as soon as the launch of the successor to Nintendo Switch. Another no-brainer feature tied to NSO is the ability to send messages to your friends directly in a text thread style messaging system, not tied to a smartphone app or anything like that, but messages and voice chat should be enabled day one on the successor hardware. There's a lot of talk online about Nintendo not wanting to have to police all of that kind of stuff, but when they are charging for an online subscription service in 2024, 2025, and beyond, I do think it is an essential feature to be able to chat with your friends, whether that be through text or through voice chat, and it should be on the console level specifically. And of course, Nintendo has a family-friendly image. If they don't want to have that support for children, you can simply lock it behind parental controls and totally disable any kind of online interactivity when it comes to the socials features just by locking it behind parental controls. And I think that that's something that can and should be implemented out of the gate with the new upgrade to the service. Trophies and achievements would be the next thing that I would hope would be tied to Nintendo Switch Online, because while it is kind of a hardware level feature, I guess you could say, it's tied to the online profile in a lot of ways, because just how on PlayStation and Xbox you can go through and see what achievements and trophies have been unlocked from any users that have completed said games and which trophies they've unlocked from each game. Like, that should all be tied to our online profiles and part of the revamp for Nintendo Switch Online 2.0. And I know not everybody is a fan of achievements and trophies. I don't think they hurt anything just by being there. So if you don't want to mess with them, you don't have to, even if they are a feature. But there's a lot of people, myself included, that actually will put in additional hours and hours of gameplay just to go get that 100% check mark that you did everything that the achievements and trophy system asked of you in each said game. Now, that will be a big headache if it's tied to games like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, because I think you're going to have to go find all the Korok seeds to get that final trophy or achievement. But I do think Nintendo should implement this in their own way. The problem with Nintendo is, though, sometimes they do want to do things so differently than the competition that when there's just a straightforward feature that they should come out with, they try to put their own Nintendo-like spin on it, and sometimes it doesn't work out as well. Just look at missions and rewards on the current Switch is kind of what we have. That's halfway equivalent to achievements and trophies, but it's very different. So I'm hoping Nintendo fleshes out this system and gets it launched around the starting point of Nintendo Switch Online for their next gen hardware. Now, from there, the more exciting topic of conversation for Nintendo Switch Online and its future has to do with the games libraries that we will see added in to the next gen hardware, because since it's going to be supported on the current Nintendo Switch and Switch 2, again, no reset button is being hit here. All of the consoles we have today, NES, SNES, Game Boy Advance, N64, Sega Genesis, all of that stuff is there day one. All of the content libraries are there day one. So you don't have to go through this trickle drip feed of new games once again for the old consoles, but rather Nintendo will continue to support those consoles in some capacity, but they will also have ample time and room to start to create new consoles for the next gen hardware. Now, one existing leak / rumor we have out there is that Virtual Boy will be playable in some capacity, whether it be as a collection of games or a system that's being added to NSO. And interestingly, at the Nintendo Museum that recently opened up, it has been confirmed that Nintendo is already emulating Virtual Boy games. And I do think that since they're doing that for the museum experience, it's likely going to be one of those no-brainer things just to add an extra console onto the service at some point in the future. And we have also seen shipping data that is heavily tied to some kind of GameCube controller that Nintendo is manufacturing behind closed doors right now. And why would they manufacture a wireless GameCube controller in 2024 or 2025? Well, that would be likely the NSO system themed controller that we will get along with the launch and announcement of a system like GameCube coming to NSO, because you probably realize that every Nintendo home console that launches on the service does get its own controller that matches the original controller of that said home console, and they will absolutely do that with GameCube. And that's probably what this shipping data that has GameCube controller components and is a wireless controller is all pointing to. So when we get the announcement remains to be seen. Historically, Nintendo has revealed major new console additions for NSO at their direct presentations, whether it be in February or in September. Those are the two big ones that they have revealed new consoles for in the past. There's nothing that says they can't do it in June. They just haven't done a new console reveal in June that I'm aware of. And September kind of makes the most sense for major NSO editions, because it's when the expansion pack, or just around the time when the expansion pack annual renewal comes up, because that service launched on October 25th, and that is when a lot of people's annual membership for the expansion pack does come back due again. And Nintendo likes to give you a reason to stay subscribed. It's why we got Banjo-Tooie and additional N64 games for like the Halloween thing. We literally saw them in the month of October do 3 separate rounds of updates for the NSO expansion pack tier. Like, very crazy stuff. Just Nintendo clearly trying to keep people subscribed and not lapsing on their annual subscription, because there's some new exciting stuff to play. So check it out and stick around for it. I am hoping we get something like GameCube announced as soon as the February Direct next year, but we will have to see what Nintendo does with actually revealing the console hardware, because I am in the mindset that this will be the big feature that might be exclusive to next gen. It might also be supported on the current Switch for GameCube games, but there is a little bit of a size issue there with just how big the GameCube games are compared to things like N64 and all the other consoles that are supported on NSO right now. I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo actually does create that wall of just GameCube's only going to be for Nintendo Switch Online on the next gen hardware, and it's not supported on the current family of Switch consoles. That is entirely a possibility. Now, then you have to have the Nintendo DS conversation, because this is actually already a console library that has made it to Wii U on Virtual Console in the past. So it's absolutely a library of games that Nintendo will entertain bringing to Nintendo Switch Online, but there is that big controller issue with a lot of DS games, pretty much all of them, using the touchscreen in some capacity or form, and it's a kind of essential to the gameplay. So how does Nintendo solve for this whenever you are playing in docked mode? Because you could say that if you just have the console out, you could do the screen side by side and just have the touchscreen available there, kind of like the Castlevania collection. If you've looked into any of that, like the side touchscreen that you would normally use is just going to be to the side of the main screen. That wouldn't be too much of an issue for handheld play, and you could still touch and interact it because the Switch is a touchscreen and the Switch 2 will be a touchscreen. However, when we're talking about docked play, I'm not expecting Nintendo to go back to a Wii U gamepad for this next generation hardware. We have seen some patents with pro looking controllers that also have a screen on them. It's possible that Nintendo does release some kind of controller with a screen on it, but I'm also not entirely banking on that. But I wonder if, when and if DS and 3DS games are ever added into Nintendo Switch Online, that Nintendo may actually have a special edition themed controller that they sell for that service, and that's actually what you need to buy in order to have a good docked play experience, because they might just let you kind of point at the screen when docked, and you use the Joy-Cons the same way you would with like a Skyward Sword, where you're able to like point and aim around with your cursor, and you're able to kind of touch the button and draw essentially on the DS screen. But think about playing Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks like that. I mean, it's going to be a clunky experience if you're trying to do that by pointing the Joy-Con at the screen. So maybe Nintendo releases a DS themed controller, it has a touchscreen on it, and that's actually what you would use for docked play. I could see them doing something like that to solve for that touch input issue. And I do believe that past DS and 3DS, whenever we see those library of games, that one day the Wii will be in this conversation as well, and we will get a special edition Wii controller for Nintendo Switch Online that, of course, will just be like the Joy-Con based motion, but it will probably work some better than that. I don't think they're going to bring back the light bar sensor or anything like that, so it's still going to probably work largely the same as how the Joy-Cons aim at the screen. But I think something like that with the Wii library of games would be really cool to see as well. Maybe that's finally how we get Mario Galaxy 2, even though I think they should remaster that and bring it over as a standalone title. Maybe for Mario's 40th anniversary, it would be really cool to see. But if not, there are definitely some gems stuck on the Wii right now that we absolutely need playable on modern hardware, and it is going to be a logical conclusion to expect over the course of the life cycle of Nintendo Switch 2 to see systems like GameCube, DS, 3DS, and Wii ultimately make it to the console. I don't think we're going to get Wii U ever, just because Nintendo largely ported over the majority of their big first-party library from that console entirely to the Switch, and I just don't think there's really a reason to add it on there. But one day we're going to look back and realize that just about every major Nintendo handheld or home console release is playable on Nintendo Switch Online, and that is a very exciting prospect to me. So let me know in the comments down below what you hope we see from the future of Nintendo Switch Online. Are you extremely happy to see the official confirmation from Furukawa, like I am, that we don't have to hit the reset button and all of our games libraries will be there day one when it comes to NSO on the successor hardware? And do you think things like GameCube, DS, 3DS, Virtual Boy, and even the Wii are in the conversation to come to Nintendo Switch Online in the next generation console's lifecycle? Or do you think there's a chance that Nintendo doesn't go too much further than GameCube and DS and kind of just leave 3DS and Wii sitting off to the side somewhere? But make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.